Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, I guess, depending on when you listen to this. Ohio State fans, the Buckeyes got a big win on Saturday night. It was a 33-24 win against Penn State, but this is a game that Ohio State had for quite some time, kind of put out there as kind of the make or break game for this season. Obviously, already having lost one this year, the Buckeyes needed to keep the focus, keep things going, get a win against Penn State on Saturday night. And they did that, as I said, coming away with a 33-24 win. It wasn't pretty. The last few weeks for the Buckeyes, it's looked real good every week, the offense, the defense, everything. This game was different. It was like a normal Penn State game when these two teams meet. It was a fight from the beginning. Penn State led 7-3. After the first quarter, the Buckeyes got back in it and kept the lead throughout the rest of the game, but it certainly wasn't any sort of cakewalk like we've seen for the Buckeyes, and possibly a good thing. Head coach Ryan Day said after the game that, he thought maybe getting a game where the Buckeyes had to kind of fight through it and be tested was good for this team. This is obviously a Penn State team that has now lost 3 games in a row, lost to Iowa a few weeks ago, then lost to Illinois in 9 overtimes last week. But the Buckeyes really believe that this Penn State team is still a quality team, a quality opponent. So while it may not look like the kind of wins they've had of late, still a solid win in my book. And the Buckeyes are certainly happy to have it. And you move on to the last several games of the season here. We'll take a look kind of through this. C.J. Stroud, not his best performance, but still 22 of 34, 305 yards and a touchdown. There were times when he looked more like the player we saw earlier in the season, a little hesitant to make some throws, maybe missed on a couple throws. The big one was obviously the 4th down throw where he tried to go to Chris Olave. He said after the game that just his read, he felt like he had to keep it a little short with what he thought was going to happen to the defense. There were a few of those tonight. It was a big game. C.J. Stroud played well. He just didn't look maybe like the Heisman candidate we've seen these last few weeks, throwing for nearly 500 yards and multiple touchdowns. Only 65% completion percentage. Not bad, but not great. But he was playing one of the better pass defenses in the country. Penn State's secondary, very good, a lot of experience in that group. So, this was one of those games C.J. Stroud was probably going to have to tough it out. What surprised me the most was TreVeyon Henderson. Now, he finishes the game 28 carries, 152 yards, and a touchdown. That's good. 5.4 yards is certainly below his average for the season, but it took a while for TreVeyon Henderson to get going. And it wasn't until that 68-yard rush, I think that was in the third quarter, that he really kind of got out. It was a lot of short plays, short yardage situations that he was in. Just couldn't get going. The offensive line didn't create the holes that it had in recent weeks. So it was a struggle for TreVeyon Henderson. And he admitted after the game, not everything's going to be perfect. C.J. Stroud said the same thing. But in the end, he like I said, 152 yards, a touchdown. He's not going to complain about that. Receiving-wise, it's spread around just as it normally is with this offense. Garrett Wilson, 7 for 82. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 6 for 97. Jeremy Ruckert, 3 for 57. Chris Olave, 3 for 44 in the touchdown. So, the offense spreading the ball around. It continued to do what it did against a much better defense than some of the recent defenses we've seen the Buckeyes play. Maybe the numbers aren't as huge, but I think that's to be expected. This is what happens when you play these bigger games. Defensively, it was interesting because this is probably the biggest test the Buckeyes have faced offensively since that Oregon game. We have to be honest, Penn State's offense has not been great since Sean Clifford got hurt against Iowa a few weeks ago. Even though he played last game against Illinois, only 10 points in regulation, didn't put up any big numbers, and came in tonight probably not 100%. Now, Sean Clifford threw for 361 yards and a touchdown, also had an interception. We'll get to that. But 52 pass attempts, he was 35 of 52. So good, not great. I think my read on this defense, which held Penn State to just 33 rushing yards, is this is a bit of what we expected, from the Buckeyes. Progress. I think this is definitely a better defense than it was when we saw them play Oregon and some of those other early games. But I think, and I tweeted this out, I think it's still a work in progress. And I think Penn State was able to expose some things and, obviously put up some big plays in the passing game. But this defense is getting better. Is it a finished product yet? a lot of young guys still on this defense that are, playing in some of their first big games. I think it certainly is making progress. I just don't think it's there yet. But I do think we saw that there's steps in the right direction today. As I mentioned, holding Penn State to just 33 rushing yards. Penn State only ran the ball 29 times, 2 touchdowns on that, one to Jahan Dotson, wide receiver, and then Kevon Lee, the running back. But all in all, I thought the Buckeyes' rush defense was good. You saw them handle that well, and Penn State hasn't run the ball well all season, so it's not a surprise that Ohio State was able to do that. I do think that we'd like to see. I know Buckeye fans certainly would like to see this pass defense take further steps. Obviously, the big day for Sean Clifford, but it's, like I said, it's a work in progress still. These guys are still developing as a defense. Don't forget, not that they completely retooled things a few weeks ago when after the Oregon game, when Matt Barnes kind of took over the play calling duties and things like that, but they certainly made a lot of changes. So this was the first time that this defense in its current form had really been tested. Passes the test, certainly, maybe not as much as you'd like to see, but I think you're okay with what you get. You obviously get an important win at home. Ronnie Hickman leads the team once again, 14 tackles. The kid's all over the place. Marcus Williamson, 6 tackles. Tyreek Smith, Cameron Brown, each 5. There were 4 sacks today, 8 tackles for a loss. The Buckeyes took a while to kind of get into the backfield and get pressure on Penn State. I think most of the first half, I was talking with my colleague Steve Hellwagon in the press box here, and it was a struggle. Sean Clifford had a lot of time early on, but once they started to get the pressure, you could feel it coming, and it worked in a big way. Forced 2 fumbles, one of which Jerron Cage returned for a touchdown. That one was forced by Tyreek Smith. Zach Harrison was also in on that play. Jerron Cage with the big recovery, 57 yards. That's a big boy touchdown right there, and he returns it. That was a big play. I believe it was Cameron Brown post game. One of the defensive players called it a game changing play. Certainly was for the Buckeyes. Let's look at when that happened. That was in the second quarter. Made it 17-7 before halftime. Obviously, Penn State kicks a field goal right at halftime to make it 17-10. But certainly a big play for the Buckeyes. So I think that you saw some progress in the defense. I think it will only continue to get better as they continue to get tested more. You're going to see some better offenses, going forward. And as they continue to get more and more reps, I think playing in a game like this, having some mistakes, they're gonna be able to coach this defense up. I still like what they're doing schematically. I still like what Matt Barnes brings to this group. So looking forward, I know college football playoff rankings come out this week. They don't mean a ton until the final one. We all know that. But it is always interesting to see kind of where the college football playoff committee kind of places teams, not only Ohio State, but some of the other teams. I think this is one of the more interesting first rankings we've had because there's still several unbeaten teams. And there's Oklahoma, who I don't think has looked great, did look better today. There's obviously Cincinnati, who is undefeated, but a group of 5 team, non-power 5. And then you've got Ohio State in there. You've obviously got Oregon, who beat Ohio State on this field. And a lot of people are talking about, how can you rank Oregon behind Ohio State when they've played head-to-head? And I certainly get that argument. I do think the Buckeyes are playing better ball right now than certainly they were back then, but I just better than and just eye test. But a lot of people don't like the eye test. I get it. So I'll be very interested to see what the committee does with those teams, how they evaluate Ohio State in comparison with Oregon, where Oklahoma, where Cincinnati is. But I don't think you should get all worked up about it if the Buckeyes aren't in that top 4 right away. We've seen in the past how these change each week. Each week the committee does different things. They're supposed to reevaluate every week with what they do. So it's certainly going to be interesting, but I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't get too worked up about it. If I were putting the Buckeyes somewhere, I'd probably have them around 4. Georgia, obviously number 1. Alabama, who I don't believe played this week, still certainly in the mix there. Obviously, they've lost to an unranked team, which I'll be interested to see how that is evaluated, but have been dominant for most of the season. Cincinnati, aside from the struggle last week, I think has been really good. I think they certainly deserve to be in the conversation, even though a group of 5 team have wins at Notre Dame and a win against Indiana. So not your normal Group of 5 team. But I think Ohio State's certainly in that mix. And I think if the Buckeyes keep winning, they're going to be in a good spot. Obviously, things are going to happen. Teams are going to lose. Ohio State's strength of schedule is only going to get better. This win against Penn State certainly helps that. You've got Michigan State on the schedule, and Michigan, those two teams played today. Michigan State got a tight win in East Lansing. So you still have an undefeated Michigan State team, what will probably be a one-loss Michigan team, although you never know. And you have to go to Ann Arbor for that one. Michigan State will come to Columbus, come to the Horseshoe here. So certainly some games there. Purdue could get back into the rankings ranked this year, and then it'll be interesting to see what you get in the Big Ten championship game, down the road, assuming Ohio State gets there in terms of what kind of ranked opponent. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Obviously, we are, still in the meat of the season. And, I think the biggest thing for this team is to keep developing. The offense showed some mistakes today, showed some problems. After looking so good these last few weeks, I think it's probably a good thing that they have now film to go on and things to correct. If guys were starting to feel good about things, now the coaches have a chance to look at them, show them on film. Hey, this is, work. We got to work defense. Obviously, the Buckeyes aren't getting ahead of themselves there. That continues to get better. Like I said, a work in progress. So, I think this was an important win for Ohio State, no matter how you sliced it. Yes, they were an 18-point favorite, and they did not cover that spread, obviously, 33-24. But Penn State has played this team tough in the past. Almost every year this game is a close one. Obviously, the Nittany Lions back in 2016 got the upset. So this has been the closest team to consistently competing with Ohio State each year. Ryan Day talked about it at the end of this game. He talked about it afterwards. And he said that, this was just a game. You didn't need to get style points in. You just needed to win. They can worry about that afterwards. And the Buckeyes do just that. So a good win for Ohio State. I think you'll look back on this one as a positive, even though Penn State, now 3 losses, may drop out of the top 25. I imagine the Nittany Lions will get back. They certainly look better this week than they did last week. So next week at Nebraska, if you didn't hear, that's going to be a noon Eastern time kickoff. Was just announced this evening, or I guess this morning, depending on where you're watching this, listening to this from. That'll be in Lincoln, a place that Ohio State has had pretty good success, except for the first trip there when Nebraska joined the Big Ten. I think that'll be an interesting game. Obviously, mobile quarterback, the defense will have to handle. He can certainly throw the ball. Martinez, Nebraska has not been good, lost today to Purdue, but, always a tough atmosphere. The Buckeyes have made it not so tough by getting up big in a lot of the games there, but a fun place. One of my favorite Big Ten stadiums to go to. Great atmosphere, around the game and everything like that. So should be a fun one. I'm going to get out of here. We already have the recap. We've got Ryan Day's press conference up on the website, Days, what we learned, the VIP members. So check that stuff out over on Bucknuts and 247 Sports. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Thanks for listening to this. If you're listening to it after the fact, I'm Patrick Murphy with 247 Sports. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys soon.